Hello and welcome to Future Squared. Stephen Hawking once said that intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, so let's adapt. My name is Steve Glaveski, and each week I'll bring you conversations with preeminent thought leaders from a variety of fields to help you think in a multidisciplinary way, kick goals in your professional and personal life, and better navigate what is fast becoming a brave, new world. Future Squared is brought to you by Collective Campus, an innovation accelerator that works with organizations to unlock their people's latent potential to create more impact for humanity and lead more fulfilling lives. If you need help driving your organization's innovation strategy, visit collectivecampus.io. And without further ado,
come with me if you want to live.
When you can find the intersection between profession and passion, you discover purpose.
Welcome back to Future Squared for episode number 371 with Andrew Ross. Andrew is the founder of URBNSURF, Australia's first surf park, which opened its doors to the public in January of 2020 to much fanfare. Prior to opening URBNSURF, Andrew spent 25 years in various legal, corporate finance, and investment banking roles before merging his profession and his passion to ultimately find his purpose, as you'll learn in this conversation. As you might imagine, building a 2-hectare large surf park that generates 1,000 ocean-like waves per hour is a Herculean feat, and one that delivers lots of both business and life lessons. Lessons we'll unpack. So strap yourself in for my hour-plus long conversation with the founder of URBNSURF Australia, the one and only Andrew Ross. Okay, so I'm here on site at URBNSURF in Melbourne's somewhat sunny Tullamarine with founder of URBNSURF, Andrew Ross. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
G'day, thanks Steve.
So for listeners who don't know what URBNSURF is, how do you describe it?
It's a fun factory. We've created the world's, not the world's, but the Southern Hemisphere's first surf park. So our surf park is different to a wave pool.
Yep.
Wave pools are designed to create an ocean-like environment for swimmers, whereas what we are is a purpose-built facility designed to create authentic surfing waves for surfers.
Yeah, and the place is not small. It's pretty much the size of an AFL football field.
Yeah, that's right. It's I don't think people really realise till they get down here and see the scale of it, but the lagoon itself is about 20,000 square metres in area, so the size of an AFL footy oval. We've got about 23 million litres of water in it, so that's the equivalent of 16 Olympic swimming pools. And we can have up to about 80 surfers at once surfing in the lagoon.
Yeah, and it's something like every surf can catch something like 12 waves an hour?
Yeah, that's it. So it depends whether you're lucky enough to be in a session that has a few less surfers booked in your particular zone. We've got larger waves out the back that you can book on a right or a left, and then some inside waves which are better suited for beginners and improvers. At the moment, we're pretty much fully booked for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I think everyone's really embraced us, which has been amazing. But we're looking at delivering people, even when we're full, about a dozen waves now.
Yeah, and that's something we'll touch on a bit later, the fact that you guys have more or less hit the ground running, which is something most businesses would absolutely love to do. The reality for most businesses is they hit the ground barely even crawling, and if ever get to that point where they're walking. So I think it's been fascinating to see you guys just come to life pretty much from day one, and like you said, be booked out for weeks on end. But I wanted to rewind a bit and learn a little bit more about your origins. I know you're a Perth boy.
Yeah.
Whereabouts in Perth?
Well, in fact, I'm actually a Geelong boy originally.
Oh, right.
So I was born in Geelong. My family are from Lorne, but moved to WA to Perth when I was about 4 years old. So I'm basically a sand groper.
Yeah.
I had my schooling in Perth. I trained as a lawyer, worked as a lawyer for about 5 years over there. I wanted to see the world, so I left my job in Perth and travelled to London. Fell absolutely flat on my face over there. No one wanted an Australian tax lawyer to work over in London. Couldn't even pick up a bar job.
How long were you looking for work over there?
Oh, I had enough money. I did 6 months travelling around the continent, and then my girlfriend came across and met me, who's now my wife, and she'd worked her little bum off during the winter period saving money for us. So we spent all of that in the first few months, and we're looking at coming back, and it was really just piecing together it was almost like you'd say, okay, this is my last shot at it. And I'd put in applications for different jobs, all crazy different things, and just couldn't get anywhere. And then I sort of, like at my darkest moment, and I'm a big believer in this, it's not how far you fall, it's how far you bounce. And at the darkest moment, I kind of pieced together that there was a mate of mine who had been surfing with in Bali at the beginning of the trip, and he had a friend who worked for an investment bank in London, and had given me his contact details. So I spent about a week learning everything I possibly could about this particular company, ABN AMRO, and the desk that he worked on, and tried to create a job for myself. Interviewed with him, and he said, "No, there's nothing that we've got."
Wow.
But I've got a mate from Perth who's been over here for about 10 years. He's running an oil company. I think they might need a bit of tax advice on something.
Yeah.
So that was my way into the oil and gas industry. I then spent again about another week in a library working 10 hours a day, learning everything I could about that particular company, those guys, the tax regime in Russia where they were operating some oil and gas assets. Went in, interviewed, and fortunately for me, I was able to pick up a job, and that sort of started my career in London. And so I was in-house legal counsel for a large oil and gas company for a few years.
Yeah, I know you worked for, was it Cape Energy and Elixir as well?
Yeah, that's right. So the one in the UK was called Sabir Energy. It's not around anymore, but it was the largest oil company on the AIM market. And then I moved into investment banking, and I was a director of corporate finance with an investment bank over there, which acted for that particular company. And then after a few years in London, my girlfriend, now wife, wanted to drag me back to Perth to get married. So reluctantly, kicking and screaming, I came back. And that was 2003, I think it was.
Yeah.
And started my MBA, kind of got sidetracked and started doing some interesting deals, created my own oil and gas company at about the age of 33, raised 45 million US out of Hong Kong from private equity. Ran that for a few years, sort of sold that off, kind of did okay-ish, but not great. Then started with a listed oil and gas company, worked for Aurora for a period of time, which was, fortunately, it was like the best performing stock on the ASX in 2013-14.
Yeah.
The guys there, who were actually the guys that I'd worked with in London originally, they took it from about 60 million market cap to 2.4 billion when they sold it.
Wow.
So that was an amazing sort of success story. Ran another company for a period of time, but turned 40 in 2011, and kind of just had been happy with everything that had happened to that point, but then started sort of feeling there's something more again. You know, I'd had kind of these periods of 5-year chunks in my career. I was at the end of a 5-year chunk. So decided to step back from the corporate life a little bit, take a year off. And as soon as I made that decision, I was reading some surf press, and, you know, lifelong passionate surfer, goes without saying, been surfing for 38 years. And I saw that Kelly was having a patent dispute with Greg Webber. So Greg's a surfboard shaper in Sydney, and Kelly's obviously the most successful competitive surfer of all time.
Yeah. So we're talking about Kelly Slater?
Kelly Slater, that's right. So they were having a patent dispute over a circular wave pool design, and it kind of piqued my curiosity. And I've been involved in upstream oil and gas and engineering and the like, and had kind of had a passing interest in this space for a period. And so without sort of anything on the horizon to do, I thought, oh, well, rather than just being a thought bubble, I'll reach out to both of these guys and find out what they're doing. So I picked up the phone, contacted Kelly's group in LA, went under confidentiality with them, found out what they're up to. Met with Greg in Sydney. I was presenting at a conference, and so I caught up with him and saw what he was doing. And then through that process, discovered a Spanish engineering firm called Wavegarden. And they'd been in this space for a number of years. Hadn't on the outside, didn't seem to have done anything. But I rang them up, spoke to them, and after an hour on the phone with their main guy, I thought, wow, this actually sounds really real. And so I found myself in Europe at the end of 2012. They invited me to their research centre in northern Spain, in San Sebastian. And under cover of darkness, they'd built a 2/3 scale surfing lagoon without anyone knowing. And I got the opportunity to surf it, and I kind of came to it thinking, oh, this is a really interesting experience for me as a surfer, but didn't think much more of it than that. And I thought, well, look, it's not going to be real, and it's not going to be like surfing, and it's, you know, whatever. It's just going to be a fun story to tell my mates when I get back to Perth. And so I turned up, A couple of pro surfers were there. The wavegarden guys immediately called them out of the water. Get out of the water. Andrew is here. He's much more important than you. He might be one of our investors.
Yeah,
I was going, oh, God. Anyway, jumped in, and I remember paddling into my first wave and got up, surfed along, did a couple of turns off the top, kicked out, and went, oh, my God. They've actually cracked it. Like, this is real. And I, as I said, I'd come into it very cynically, with my investment banking hat on, and thought, oh my goodness, I need to be part of this. I'd always thought I need to find something that exists somewhere else in the world that's not in Australia and bring it to Australia. I always think they're really good business models. And so I picked up the rights to their technology for Perth personally, and then thought that'd be a great little interesting thing to have to work on in my year off, keep me out of my wife's hair. And it sort of started from there.
Well, there's a hell of a lot to unpack in that. I mean, even just going back to when you're in London and looking for work, it's not about how far you fall, it's how far you bounce back, just that resilience. And I like to say on this show, every no gets you closer to a yes. But if you don't like the way that discomfort or that adversity feels, you end up quitting and opting to do something easier, which means you might be comfortable and easy, but you're going to have a very mediocre, boring life. So absolutely love that story of just perseverance and also serendipity, like the opportunity. My mate works in oil, speak to him, that led to the opportunities to work in London in that space, and then that opened the doors to investment banking and everything else that came thereafter.
That's it.
But even seeing things from the investment banker's eye, where you're usually very skeptical, looking at balance sheets and financial statements and everything else, like where are the holes? When you saw this, there were no holes. You just saw the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I guess, perhaps some of that was the emotions as well, given that you've been surfing for 38 years, I would have thought. Yeah,
that's it. And I guess it's, just to your last point, I find that, the luckier I get, the harder I work as well.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that serendipity thing, I think you can create your own serendipity a bit through effort and grind.
Yes.
So that's important. But to your point about the investment banking side and being pretty hard-nosed about it, I guess I've kind of come up with this phrase, and I'm not sure whether I need to credit to someone else or whether I've picked it up along the years.
I'm pretty good with quotes, so let me know and I'll tell you.
Well, I'll let you know what it is. You might be able to tell me where I've got it from. But I've come up with this thing that when you can find the intersection between profession and passion, you discover purpose.
Yes.
And so for me, surfing that very first wave was almost like being hit by lightning. I could see right from that day, which was the 12th of September 2012, I could see that I could almost envision this moment, sitting here with you now, looking out over this vast surfing lagoon that's already delivered all these amazing experiences to people so far.
I love that quote. And it's not 100% identical, but Jim Collins, who wrote the book Integrate, he talks of the hedgehog theory,
right?
Where he says, do something that you can be the best in the world at, do something that you absolutely love, and do something that makes money. Like that intersection. And he uses the hedgehog metaphor because a hedgehog does one thing really well. If predators are coming to get it, curls up into a little ball, spikes come out, nobody's touching it, right? And that's essentially it. Passion, purpose. Well, at the intersection of passion and profession is purpose. That's it. Beautiful. And that values alignment piece as well, whether it's work or a relationship, whatever it is in life, if you haven't got that values alignment, things are just like rolling a boulder uphill.
Yeah, that's exactly. And it's a really good analogy, rolling the boulder uphill. Like if you think back on it, I had to raise $30 million for a concept. It didn't have a business model attached to it. It didn't have a full-scale version of the technology. There wasn't an existing industry segment for this. But I kind of pieced all those pieces together, and because I felt that this is such a purposeful journey for myself, it never gave me any moment of doubt that this thing wouldn't be successful. We wouldn't be able to create waves. We wouldn't be able to create amazing experiences for people.
So you basically bought the rights to this on the back of going out to the R&D lab over in San Sebastian a good 8 years before the park opened to the public. Are you able to disclose how much the rights cost?
I can't.
Okay, that's okay.
But it was a significant personal sum.
Significant personal sum, which, nowadays a lot of the thinking is test your assumptions, get some, build some prototypes. Obviously with this, it's
iterate, fail fast.
The whole lean startup philosophy. Whereas what you did was very much the whole, not necessarily build it and they will come, but that's planted the seed for, let's buy the rights. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
And people will come. Now, of course, having your investment banking background, I mean, you knew that Melbourne has, 300,000 odd surfers.
Yeah.
Per capita, it's the biggest surfing country in the world. And Melburnians need to travel a good hour and a half just to get to some waves, and that's providing the conditions are good. I know just before we were chatting about the fact that in Melbourne, the last 3 weeks, we've had nothing but shitty onshore winds, and the place has been like a washing machine. So that, amongst myriad other factors that you would have considered, gave you the confidence to actually do this, despite the fact that there was no testing, no validation. You just had to build it and see what would happen. So how did you sell that to investors, though?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think I'm a big believer that if you can integrate head, heart, and gut, then you make exceptional decisions. And so for me, it was about trying to convince investors, and many of whom don't even surf, that this has fundamental strengths as a business model for the following reasons. And so I knew all the reasons why people would reject this particular opportunity to invest. And so what I did is I spent all my time trying to answer as best as I could with third-party data or research or something like that, all of those questions that I knew and could foresee that they were going to ask. So, we knew what the costs were going to be. We knew what the design was going to be. We knew we could give people lots of information about how big the market is. There's lots of great ABS data, and we did a lot of primary market research ourselves. And that, if you're ever moving into a brand new space, I can't express how important that is to get some sort of independent testing of your market as best as you possibly can to support the theses that you're running forward with your forecasts and the like. So all of that gave us confidence. But at the end of the day, you're right, build it and they will come. It's almost like we knew that some people would come, but how many? And I guess that's where we're currently at in our journey right now. We've been open for about 18 days, I think. I think we've had dust storms, and the lagoon's currently getting cleaned at the moment because of the mud rain that fell the other day. We've had lightning strikes and having to clear lagoon for that. I think we're due a plague of frogs, and then I think we'll have had all of the biblical troubles hit us.
Well, no, you were saying you think Mother Nature's got it in for you.
Yeah, well, I'm starting to get a bit worried. I think, maybe we've upset someone up in the heavenly realms, because we've kind of bottled lightning and are replicating what Mother Nature does so well that they're a little bit angry at us. Now, I don't think that's the case, but we've had some incredible challenges in the last sort of 15 to 18 months in building this and also in getting it open. And it's just been a massive credit to our development team and to our ops team that they've been able to, hold true and keep courage and keep fighting on.
100%. So I want to touch on those challenges, but before that, one thing you touched on that I think is really valuable and worth pointing out is defining what those, or projecting what those objections would be before you even went out to speak to investors, which I think for a lot of entrepreneurs listening to this, take the time to define what those objections could be. Is it price? Is it lack of social proof? Is it the delivery method, or whatever the case may be? And then have answers ready. And have multiple answers ready. And by doing that, you're just going to save yourself a lot of heartache. And when you are up in front of potential investors or potential customers, you're just going to project more confidence.
I think so. And I think, the fundamental thing for me as a founder and the person that's sort of, embarked on this crazy journey is you need to have domain expertise. And that domain expertise is not about presenting all of the positive stuff. It's also being very, very well aware of all the risks and all the unknowns as well. But providing a very clear pathway or a map to explain to people who perhaps come from very different backgrounds to you as well. As I said before, I was pitching a lot to people who don't surf. So how do you explain something that for me has been a constant single guiding thing that I've done in my entire life that drives my wife mad and drives all my mates' wives mad, because we've got this separate sort of mistress that kind of dominates our thinking. How do you even translate that across to someone who's never touched a surfboard before, and get them on the journey and get them to understand that passion? So I think it's really important to have domain expertise, knowing what your product is, knowing your market, knowing the things that you don't know about your market and how you're going to resolve that. And that really is your job as a founder or someone that's going out pitching to raise money.
Yeah, I know there's the old adage of people being quite visceral in the sense that you go out to see a car that you like, you look at it, oh, I'm not sure about this. And the, car salesman will say, well, look, here are the keys, go for a drive, take the top off. It's a sunny day, cruise down the beach, come back, couple hours, take your time. And then coming back, you want to buy that car like 10 times more because you felt it, you sat in it.
Yeah.
You could see yourself cruising around that summer. So in this case, I mean, you couldn't essentially do that, but was there any aspect of taking some of these potential investors out for a surf in the beach or showing them the R&D lab over in Spain? Was there anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our key investors, so we arranged site visits to Spain so they could meet the guys behind the technology. So, one element of it is, we've secured the rights from a bunch of engineers in Spain to deliver Spanish technology all the way around the world to create this thing that's never been built before, and it's all going to be good.
Yep, great pitch.
And, yeah, exactly. So, pick the holes in that. We did get several of our bigger investors across there to surf the demo lagoons that the guys had, and that was incredibly important. Just for them to feel comfortable that our major partner in our business were credible, and also for them to experience, even on a small scale, that same experience we'd be delivering to customers, and that was going to be the way in which we're going to make money for the business. Was really, really important.
So you raised $30-odd million. Over what period of time was that?
It took a long time. We got all of our modelling together, and so to that point, I knew that we had to be just bulletproof on everything that we could be. So our detailed economic model, which was the largest model I think I've ever built, and I come from a petroleum industry background where we have huge models for mapping out 20-year production life cycles for wells and things. I brought that level of diligence to that modelling for essentially a consumer business, which I don't think has been done before. We had Deloitte do forensic analysis of our model to give people the confidence there was no flaws or busts.
Rubber stamped it, yeah. And so I guess for me it was a process of, once we had everything ready, we had a 65-page information memorandum, had a big data room ready to go. I'd raised money before for other businesses, and I'd also sat on the other side of the table where I was getting pitched to when I was in the investment bank. And so it gave me a pretty clear idea about what people need in this space. And but still, that process, we had a corporate advisor assist us as well. But because we were all so new and it was so random, really, what we're trying to do, it did take a while. It was probably about a good 9 to 10 months really to close the raise. And it probably was the largest raise in Australia for a non-tech business in the past 5 to 10 years. Definitely. Prior to that, so that was a pretty amazing effort to be able to close that out. Do you think you could have done it without your investment banking background?
No. Not at all. No, and I think that's the thing for me. I've had this career doing multiple different things in the corporate space, running companies, raising money for companies, advising companies, and all of those things together gave me that skill set and knowledge that I needed for that particular thing. And so I felt like it was coming to like a pinnacle point for my career, and everything that I'd done to that point had given me what I needed to achieve that outcome. So
and it's funny because nowadays there's so much emphasis on kids in their 20s just starting their own companies. But if you look at the statistics, oftentimes it's people who start businesses in their 40s who are the most successful, because they tend to bring a lot of insights from 20 years working in different industries, perhaps industries that are somewhat aligned but complementary to what they're trying to do. Whereas if you haven't got that background, and I've seen this firsthand working with startups, you have 23-year-olds go out to trying to sell legal tech to a law firm, and then their mind boggles as to why this company won't give them $100,000 to use their tech, or why this company is taking 6 months to get over the line, and why they need to loop in so many different people. It's like, that's the way they work. You need to understand those inner trappings. If you know how they work, then you'll know how to play their game.
Absolutely. And I think it's if you're being an ex-lawyer, if you're a 23-year-old pitching the head of all of the information services for a large national law firm, who's probably a guy in his 40s, take up your new software offering, it's a difficult thing. Like it's almost even a generational challenge there as well. So there's a lot to be said. I love the passion of younger people than me, you know, just trying to get after it from an entrepreneurial startup perspective. It fascinates me and I love it, you know. And once I've kind of, my feet have sort of hit the ground again from this, it's something I want to get involved in more deeply in the later part of my career. But I think there's a lot to be said for getting really good, solid experience and mentors and advisors and the like into your business.
Have you had certain mentors you've kept throughout your life?
Yeah, I have. And I wished I'd had more, to be honest, and recognized the value of them earlier on, because you're full of ego and you're full of I can do it and I'll back myself and all that. Yeah, exactly. But I think now looking back on it, I had in the oil and gas space, I had a mentor who was about 20 years my senior, who was amazing, and that was great. And then moving into this space, I've surrounded myself with people that I really trust and believe in, and who I know have my back, who are maybe even a little younger than me, but I'm in my late 40s now, but who have had incredible careers and are very skilled in their own sort of adjacent industries to where I currently am, and I really value their advice and their feedback and input, and finding people like that, even if it's other entrepreneurs in an incubator or something you can just share ideas with, is really important, I think. Yeah.
And I think finding people who bring, say, adjacent disciplines to the table, like you might be great at something, but acknowledging that you have weaknesses and holes in your game and that you can't be great at everything, and seeking out those people who are awesome at X and Y, and you bring A, and together you make something awesome. But no,
that's exactly it. And I think if there's an Achilles heel that I've got, it's that I think that I'm great at kind of almost everything. Yeah, and that's a real blind spot for me.
Well, successfully launching this surf park probably wouldn't do good for that humility then.
Oh well, no, we're going to talk about the difficulties, I'm sure, but I've had enough kicks in the guts and in the head to realise that. If you can find people that are truly talented and have the same belief as you and the passion and whatever, and they're really good at certain things, and just let them go for it. And, I've been a big believer in that in the past when I've had teams. Just hire the best people you possibly can, set the strategy, the vision, empower them, and give them the resources they need, and just let them
get out of the way.
And get out of the way.
Echoes what many famous entrepreneurs say. I think Richard Branson says something very, very similar. Hire great people, give them what they need. Give them or empower them with a worthwhile mission as well, and get the hell out of the way. Yeah, because how else would he have countless brands under his name? Like, you can't manage them all. And if you're going to micromanage, because I see this a lot with startup entrepreneurs who don't want to outsource anything, don't want to delegate anything. Like, but what if they get it wrong? If that's your attitude, you can only get so big because you can only manage so many people at a time. And if you try and micromanage so many people at a time, you're going to burn out after a year or two. And be done with it.
Just completely blow yourself up, and you become the bottleneck in restricting your own success. And at that point you're making about Richard, I was fortunate enough in my year off when I was traveling, I spent a week on Necker Island with him.
Nice.
And so we had sort of a leadership gathering. There's about 20 of us on the island, and people from all around the world and different places. And he is such a remarkable individual. He's so humble, and he's got this. He was explaining to me that they had no budget for Virgin when it first started, so he had to be this outlandish kind of character to drive the brand. But that's not him at all as a person. And so, he's got. I think he was telling me he's got 450 companies in the Virgin Group. Each of them have a CEO. He can barely see each of those CEOs once a year. And so he's got this thesis that once a team grows to about 50 to 100 people, then he says to the vice president level people, right, we're chopping off part of the business, and you guys are now the CEOs running this part of the business, and halves it, and then kind of keeps that sort of hunger and that smaller company entrepreneurial approach going, which I thought was really interesting. It was that was a very life-changing, life-affirming sort of week for me, like right at a crux point of my life as well. And to spend a little bit of time with him was incredible.
I think that's a really good point as well, just about splitting the company, because there is research that's been done on trust and how small groups, people tend to trust each other more because everybody knows each other on a first name basis. If you were to do something that affected someone else in your team, team. It's visceral. You don't like the way it makes you feel. But as companies get bigger and bigger and set up all these functional departments, you don't know who's who in the zoo, and therefore it becomes easier to rationalize misconduct and things of that nature and not have the company's best interests at heart. So keeping those company sizes small, it maintains trust, but it's hiring the right people to begin with, like you said, like A players, means that you can then just empower them and they can make the decisions and things can move quickly. But if you don't trust the people you work with, doesn't matter how big your team is, you're going to have to call meetings and oversee every single decision that's made. And suddenly you're going to be moving like a big behemoth that gets nothing done.
You just get so slow. And what you do then is you put in place a whole bunch of policies and procedures to try and regulate behavior. And that, again, that just acts as a massive limiting factor on the speed of growth.
Yep.
And I think you're exactly right. You know, as companies grow, if you can scale without siloing, and we're having all these sort of people that are lost in silos and you can't really determine what their performance is, you can still keep doing it on multiple small team bases. So I think that there's probably some really good thinking around that.
Yeah. I think Netflix, their culture deck goes in depth about this, and that's why they their big thing is hiring at top of the market so they can get great people. And if they have great people, one thing they definitely don't want to do is kill them with policy and process, because then they're just going to walk and go somewhere else, because great people want to be actualized. They want the freedom to actually do things and create value. And they can see that they're going to screw up, but because they have the right values, they're going to pick up the pieces, learn from that, keep moving forward. And if you screw up every single day but learn from that, you're going to end up much further forward than the company that's too scared to do anything, because they're just shrouded in process and policy, and everybody just prefers to outsource accountability instead of take ownership. So with the team here, I mean, I've observed a lot of awesome people today. I came out here for a surf a couple of weeks ago. I think it was day 2 when you guys opened. Like, you've got some awesome talent here. Like, whether it's someone working at the front desk, whether it's the surf trainers, was there a particular sort of strategy or thesis or whatever it was around the hiring process, like the kinds of people you brought into the fold here at URBNSURF?
Yeah, there was a lot of thinking that went into it, and then that was kind of thrown out the window when we realised there's no surf instructors that live in the Melbourne CBD or metro area. No, we've been really fortunate. We put a lot of thought into it. We recognise that the most important bit of our business is our people, and because those people are the ones that are delivering firsthand the experience to the guest, and it is that guest experience which is the reason why people will want to come back and see us again and continue doing what they're doing. And so I think if provided our staff can understand and live and act in accordance with our brand values, and we're big on inclusion. Wherever you are in your journey, your lifelong journey of surf, whether you're right at the very beginning or you're very experienced, we want to feel like we can add something to that journey and deliver you some value. And I think it's we've just got an amazing group of younger staff members here who are just so totally committed and passionate about what it is that we've developed here. And they, hour after hour, they're there in the lagoons, like hooting people who are standing up for the very first time on boards. And, makes me emotional thinking about it. But that's great.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And just as we went on a little bit of a tour of the park earlier, of course, we've got the cleanup today. Moods aren't as you would think. Moods wouldn't be that positive. Yeah. But one thing I observed was people in the park would see you coming from like 20 meters away. They'd raise their hand. Hey, Andrew, it's good to see you back. They're not trying to avoid you. The big boss is here, and we still got to clean up. Hopefully, we will try to get the park open tomorrow and that sort of stuff. You're on a first name basis with everyone, and it seems like you've really invested in developing those strong bonds with pretty much everyone in the organization, regardless of what tier, where they sit in this proverbial hierarchy, if you will.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. We've got, and I guess my role as founder is that, it's to kind of keep the flame alive, live and breathe, and be the brand proposition. And for me, that's just sharing the stoke with everyone, just being, as supportive as I can be of the team. We've all had challenges and whatever I can do to support them is what I want to do. And I'm just so interested in everything that they're doing about this.
Yeah.
I love this business.
Yeah.
This was just a kind of a brain fart of an idea 7 years ago for me now.
Yeah.
And now it's materialized, and there's little interesting stories that are happening around the park all day, every day, that our staff are having interactions with guests, and there's really cool background stories that our guests have that they're sharing with our staff. And, I just love hearing all that stuff as well. So
Awesome. So you mentioned kicks in the guts a couple times. We've had a number of challenges over the last 18 months. What have some of the big ones been?
Well, I guess dragging the lagoon across the line to get it finished was a really major challenge. We've got some new technology that we used for the lagoon floor, and unfortunately it needed relatively dry conditions to complete it. And we had the wettest winter, I think, since the 40s or something last year. And so we needed a clear patch of about a month, and we just couldn't get that. So literally there was months and months and months that we're just walking around out here in the mud, just shaking our heads and trying to keep positive, and we've got this phrase. I'm going to make up a whole bunch of T-shirts for the dev team, but it says just 2 more weeks, because we kept saying, no, it's just 2 more weeks, we'll be fine. And
saying that for 6 months.
For 6 months, yeah, exactly. So, and when you have those overruns in terms of time, obviously there's overruns in terms of cost, and it starts putting pressure on us. And I guess that, and we never really knew then when we were going to launch, and so you're sitting in the car with your foot hard down on the accelerator, but it's in neutral. You just don't know when to slam it into drive. So that was obviously challenging for the ops team and for the marketing guys, and never sort of really having some structure around that launch phase. So I've been just blown away by how cool it's been, the relatively short but intense launch that we've done, and the reception we've received. But yeah, in terms of, I guess for me personally, living in Perth and then trying to manhandle the construction of Lagoon and finish it off meant a heap of travel for me, and being away from family.
I know you spent 180 odd nights away from family last year.
About half the year I've spent here in Melbourne through 2019. I think I worked it out. It was something like 70 something return flights. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3 would be there back, which was about 200,000 kilometres of air travel last year. And so that was a huge personal challenge.
Yeah.
But,
how did you manage those expectations with the wife and the kids?
Not well, to be honest. I think, I said before that, it's been a purposeful journey, but you've got to be really careful as an entrepreneur to keep some balance in your life, and as much as you're so pumped about what you're trying to achieve, if you lose that balance, you kind of blow yourself up. And I've very much wavered too far across trying to deliver Lagoon, deliver the vision and the like, and didn't invest enough time in the wife and kids. Shout out to Sam and Lockie and Chloe. So
how old are the kids?
My son Lockie's 11, my daughter Chloe's 9. Yeah. So right at that point where they do need to have dad around. So this year going forward, I'm spending a lot more time with them. Awesome. And taking more of a strategic role in what we're doing rather than an execution role.
Yeah, and I guess at least with this, there was some kind of end date in sight, like the big launch, where that meant that you would have less pressure on your time, whereas with a lot of entrepreneurs there is no proverbial sort of end sight. They just keep going and going and going. And I've seen so many successful entrepreneurs speak live or on podcasts, and oftentimes they regret not being there for their kids, and that they wish that they would be remembered as a loving father and husband more so than a big high-profile entrepreneur. Yeah. But I think making that realization early is critical for anyone in the game.
Absolutely, and you're right. There was this sort of end point that we were going to achieve at some point. It's just we couldn't see it, and I kept saying to my wife, "It's just only another 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks." I'm pretty sure I said that for about 6 or 7 months. So I doubt she's ever going to believe me ever again on that. But it's. I think that's a really fundamental learning that despite how passionately involved you are in your business, that you do need to keep those familial relationship elements sort of front and center in whatever you do, because that makes you who you are.
Oh, it's a source of energy as well.
A source of energy, and businesses will come and go, and they're otherwise you're just doing it by yourself, and you can achieve so much more if you've got loving, supporting people around you as well. So that's really important.
Yeah, and that comes back to what we talked about earlier with having good people around you, so that, like you said, you can take the foot off the accelerator a bit and let other people drive. But if you didn't, then you wouldn't be able to do that, because it'll all be on you. So
yeah, exactly. And I think the last 2 or 3 years, I probably worked harder than I've ever worked in my career, and I've worked pretty hard in other roles. So it does. I'm not diminishing the fact that it does take a huge amount of effort to deliver what's perceived as success, and to grow something from nothing to something of value. You certainly need to put the time and effort in, but there's and I think that's the founder's challenge. It's to how do you maintain that balance? Although I've had over 2,000 waves in the lagoon now, which I calculated the other day was something like the equivalent of 12 years of surfing for me, which is amazing. I think I'm probably the least fit or healthy or flexible than I've been in my entire life. I need to sort of invest a little bit of time back into that as well.
Yeah. So. Well, that's one of the things about this pool. Like, when I heard it was opening, I thought, man, we could bring back that feedback loop of learning so much. I mean, I've only been surfing for like a year and a half, and to be able to come out here more often than have to, go down the coast maybe once a fortnight and hope that the conditions are good. Like you said, you can cram so much learning into such a short, condensed period of time, and catch way more waves. Even if you book an hour here, you catch 12 odd perfect waves, work on certain aspects of your game. It's fantastic for anyone who's trying to accelerate.
Yeah, and that's one of the main unique selling propositions, USPs for our business, that we worked out really early on, is there's progression pathways for everyone. Whether you've never touched a surfboard before and want to give it a try, or whether you're Taj Burrows, or one of the other pros that have been here in the lagoon.
You've had quite a few pros.
Yeah, heaps. And
name drop some of them.
Well, I've had some amazing surf sessions with Mark Matthews, a big wave surfer, with Joel Parkinson, former world champ. We've got Mick Fanning's here next Monday.
Nice.
Not Monday coming, Monday after. We've had some of the female surfers like Tyler Wright and Sally Fitzgibbons and Nikki Van Dyke. We've had who else? Kai Otten, and we've had a lot of Harry Bryant and Conor O'Leary,
and some Hollywood A-listers as well, from what I understand.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to surf a few times now with Chris Hemsworth and Liam, and who are just awesome guys. Like, they've got the looks, they've got the bloody movie star careers, and they're absolutely top individuals.
Top blokes,
they're the triple threat. So
I understand they booked it out for a day and just brought all their mates in and just partied and surfed all day.
Oh, they did, and to be honest, it was just friends of their school mums and dads from Byron who go to school with their kids, and mates of theirs from the island. They grew up around Phillip Island and stuff, and mates who are plumbers, who just dudes, friends of theirs for life.
It's fantastic that they've been able to maintain that sort of tight-knit community despite the success they've had that's taken them overseas and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're just rock solid, and both Liam and Chris are just frothing groms. They just love surfing, and so for them being here and surfing at Urban Surf was really just so much fun for them, and we just had such a great time.
Awesome. So touch on a couple of the challenges, and I know coming with an investment banking background, risk management is a big thing. You would have had a risk and control matrix, I imagine, something to that effect. I was lucky enough to go and look under the sheets, if you will, before this interview, and you got so much redundancy built into this place. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to the evolution of surf parks generally. So surf park technology is only in its sort of infancy in many ways. The wave pools have been adapted to be kind of like surf parks in the past, and this is the third generation of surf park technology that we have here.
Yep.
It's a modular system, and that modular system gives us some flexibility in terms of the way we can create waves. So we can create waves of different types. We can also operate the system even if a couple of the modules were to fail at once. We can still produce waves. So if you're not making waves, you're not making money. Some of the earlier versions of surf park technology had single point failure in their design, so they'd have one massive motor and one massive cable and one massive wave foil. If any of those things failed, then you're kind of out for several weeks, or even months perhaps.
Customers aren't that patient.
No, that's it. And I think so for me, it felt like with this technology, which is called the Wavegarden Cove, with it having been developed, it felt like from an operator's perspective, we had a much higher degree of reliability. We were able to offer different product types to our customers and then obviously service a broader market segment, which is important. And it actually has much higher capacity than quite a lot of the other technologies as well. So, your revenue potential for this type of business is a function of bums on boards multiplied by the frequency of waves. And so the frequency of waves we can produce here is much higher than any other surf park technologies. The number of people we can fit in is higher than the other technologies, and we can actually split it between beginners and advanced people and have them surf simultaneously. So which is an obvious advantage as well.
How many people at a time can be in the lagoon?
It's a maximum of 84 people, and that's split between 18 people surfing the big wave on the right, 18 surfing the left out the back, and then we've got the inside bay areas where we can have up to 24 people surfing in the right-hand bay and 24 in the left, taking lessons or doing surf sessions.
So you've got like beginner waves, intermediate, advanced, and you got the beast.
We got the beast as well, So which is for those who don't surf, it's like a very intense barreling wave that's incredibly round and hollow and has a huge amount of power with it, and is quite technically challenging to ride. So, and it's only rare that you get those types of waves in the ocean. So big slabbing barrels, and typically they're over very, very shallow reefs, incredibly dangerous to ride. So the fact that we can produce one sort of just a bit overhead in terms of its height here in the lagoon is really remarkable, and it opens up opportunities for people who perhaps have surfed for a long time but never really get exposed to those types of waves. So it's pretty incredible.
Well, one of my 2020 goals was to get barreled, so maybe it'll be here. So before surfers who perhaps haven't been out to a wave park or a surf park rather like this one, is there anything to be said about every wave being the same? Because I know that's a concern that surfers might have. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and it's a worry that I had. I was talking before about how do you create a business around this, and I thought that what people would be concerned about is the repetitive nature of the wave, and that they would lose interest in it after a while. I thought about that for a long time, and I was thinking, in Perth there's a little break in Cottesloe called Seconds, and I've surfed that for over 30 years, and the wave is kind of the same all the time, and I still go down there whenever I can and surf it. The other thing as well is surfers spend a lot of money to go off to remote parts of Indonesia on boat trips to surf cylindrical perfect waves. So there's an argument there that surfers do seek out perfection. However, there's been some criticisms of Kelly Slater's wave recently that I saw one of the surf journos wrote it, I can't remember who it was, but they said, who could have thought that perfection could be so mundane? And so there's an element there that if it's too perfect and it's just mechanical the whole time, it takes something away from the experience. And I think, I think, and I'm sure I'll say this, but ours is a pretty interesting mix because our wave is actually affected by the wind, and more so than I thought it would be, in terms of the way that it makes it break and it changes it. And the first wave in the set is different to the second wave or the third wave because each subsequent wave draws out a little bit more water, makes it slightly shallower, makes the wave break slightly differently. Perhaps makes the currents in the lagoon operate differently, which then changes how the waves break as well. So, I've probably surfed more waves than anyone in the lagoon over the last few months. And every experience I go out there and session that I have, there's still something slightly different about the waves. You know, it's vastly different surfing on an onshore day to an offshore day. It's vastly different surfing. We've got about 18 different wave settings. And so if the guys just chuck on different waves and different types of waves, it just varies it all up. And then it's different waves within sets of waves as well that break differently. So for me, I think we've got a really nice happy medium here where you can rely that a wave is going to be of a certain type, but it has enough difference to it to keep it interesting. And the last little point on this as well is, as a beginner surfer, what you want is you want to have the same wave over and over and over again so you can practice. As you become a more advanced surfer, you want to have slight differences so that you can go a bit freeform and start practicing your technique on different canvases, and you learn from that. So I think the technology we've got here actually unlocks that pretty well.
So how has surfing here, like you said, you've condensed 12 years of surfing into the last 6 months or so, changed your relationship with surfing at the beach?
Yeah, it's interesting. Surfing for me it's been my lifelong abiding passion. So building a surf park where you've kind of got waves on tap, I was a little bit worried that I'd bugger up surfing for myself. You know, the experience of surfing. And since I had the first wave in the lagoon in mid-October last year to now, I've been in the ocean 3 times. And each of those experiences have been really weird for me, I have to say.
Fighting people in the lineups.
I got dropped in on twice at Lefties on Tuesday. I was then surfing with Taj at Smith's Reef on Wednesday on this slabbing right-hand barrel. And almost died. And then I was surfing on a smaller wave just over the New Year break and was out the back and by myself on this little remote wave in Mandurah in WA where there's sharks and stuff, so you got to worry about that a little bit. And I got 2 waves in about half an hour because there was a bit inconsistent as well. And I literally got so pissed off and angry and bored that I just had to paddle in. And I was thinking, oh no, I hope I haven't buggered myself up with this. So my relationship with surfing is still evolving now that I've got this other mistress, which is the surf park. So I've got a weekend of surfing down the coast this coming Australia Day weekend.
Down Torquay
Way, and there's going to be some great waves on. I'm surfing with a really good friend, and I'm going to be really interested to see. I know that from a technique point of view, that does translate across. So I'm surfing better today than I've surfed almost ever. And so that aspect of surf parks certainly does carry across. If you want to become a better surfer, coming to us, almost like practicing your swing down the driving range if you're a golfer, it's the same sort of thing, you know, and you can become and progress much more rapidly in a lagoon. We had Owen Wright, who's a world tour surfer, in here Monday a week ago, and Owen had 3 hours in the lagoon and said he got all of his timing spot on and got rid of all the rust over the Christmas break, getting ready for the first pro event of the year up on the Gold Coast, and said that would have taken him over a month in the ocean. The 3 hours that he had working with his coach, Micro Hall, it would have taken him about a month in the ocean, he reckons. So there's something in it there. In terms of the visceral experience of surfing, I think there's going to become a little bit of a difference between pool surfing and surfing down the coast, and you're going to have different compartments in your mind to kind of separate the two, I think. I'm still working on that. I'm not quite sure. The big, and sorry, I've gone on and on without you going to dive in, but the big abiding thing for me when I started this off, and forgive me for swearing, but I just didn't want to fuck up surfing. Whatever we did, I just did not want to fuck up surfing. And, you know, surfing has a very deep and long heritage here in Australia. It's like a religion to many people. And whatever we did here with the park, I wanted to add to that. I didn't want us to detract from it or take it in a direction that wasn't appropriate for surfing. And hopefully feedback from our customers and guests and the like is that we've done a reasonable job of that thus far. And that's obviously our challenge, to keep doing that.
I don't think you've done the sport of surfing any disservice whatsoever. If anything, you've probably opened it up to more people, a lot of suburbanites. I mean, out in the beginner pool, seeing young kids as young as 3 or 4 years old getting out there, standing up for the first time with big smiles on their faces. Perhaps they wouldn't have had that opportunity until they were a lot older without something like this. And I can see a lot of schools, primary schools, sending kids out here for day trips, learning how to surf, because at the moment I think there is the Phillip Island surf camp that some schools get sent to, but I wasn't sent to one. I know growing up in the western suburbs, if this was around when I was a kid, we definitely would have come out here, and perhaps I would have discovered surfing much younger than 34. So, yeah.
That's it. And I think I have this big belief that if everyone was a surfer, the world would be a better place.
Oh yeah.
And I think, and that's because people would have similar sort of values and
100%.
And the like. So.
Yeah, I mean, I went out for a surf this morning down at Ocean Grove, and going into it, I had a few things on my mind, but coming out of the water after about an hour 20 minutes, just felt like a new person, right?
Oh,
it just
amazing.
washes away all your worries, and you just realize that these little things, that they don't really matter that much. What matters is enjoying the days, hours, weeks, months, years that you actually have on this earth, and not sweating the small stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's so important, that connection that you can make with nature when you're in the ocean, and that effect that it has, just to sort of put everything back into perspective for you. You spend it, like you say, an hour and a half doing a bit of physical activity, get that salt rinse through you, and it just makes the rest of the week that much better. Yeah.
Although one thing I will say is, coming out here, when you go out into the ocean, your distaste for paddling out just gets a little bit greater. It's like, it's so easy to get past the break here and just catch a wave, and past the break and catch a wave. I mean, there is a little bit of a rip that you kind of have to swim against and everything else, but once you get into the right spot, it takes you right out. Whereas this morning, white water.
Yeah.
My duck dive isn't the best, so you kind of get pushed back a bit. Eventually you get past the break, catch one. All right, now we got to play this dance, do the dance again.
That's it.
So there are elements, I guess, where it may soften some of us up when we're actually out there in the ocean. We're like, screw this, let's go back to urban surf.
Yeah, I know. One of the interesting ones for me is there was really, really strong southwesterly winds a little while back. We had kind of rain and even hail coming in sideways over the park here. And we were still getting shacked. The barrels was running.
Yeah, I think I read something about that. The onshore winds obviously doesn't affect it.
If it was down the ocean, it would just be completely unsurfable. Yeah. So that's a great thing, that we can allow people to surf more, because we can provide.
That's the hashtag surf more.
Surf more. Try and always slip that in. And I guess that's the thing. Like, we're not saying we're better than the ocean at all. No, I love the ocean, and I think what we do is we provide opportunities for people to connect with their sport more frequently, more safely, perhaps more conveniently, and allow you to surf more. So that's obviously a strong selling point for this.
100%. Yeah. So you mentioned sharks over in WA.
Yeah.
Now, obviously people don't surf at nighttime, one, because most beaches aren't lit all that well, but the sharks come out to play after sunset. But here at Urban Surf, you've got night surfing. Yeah, that's it.
And it's incredible. Like, I love snowboarding. And so when I'm in Japan, up in Niseko, you can snowboard under lights.
Yep.
I really enjoy that. It just brings something else that's different to snowboarding. But the same thing here in Urban Surf. We have sessions running through till 10 o'clock at night. We've got big lighting towers around the lagoon. And it's just incredible surfing after dark. And although it feels like it's daytime, we were surfing out there just the other night and looking around, and I looked over the top of the wave generator and the sky's black and there's this massive moon just hanging up there. And like, I hadn't even kind of conceived that it's in the middle of the night sort of thing. And it's really remarkable. And I think, again, that convenience thing, you could finish a long day or be putting the kids to bed, and you could just go, right, I'm just going to sneak down for a quick hour in the lagoon and sort of rinse away your worries.
Yeah, well, couldn't agree more on rinsing away your worries with surfing. And again, like you said, it makes people better, and the more people we can get into surfing from a younger age, the better the world will be. But I was looking at your company values. We think big and celebrate new ideas, change, and adaptability. And I think that's so key. And, never resting on your laurels. Like, you guys are killing it right now. You're booked out for weeks on end, but I imagine that you're always thinking about what's next,
Yeah.
and what do we need to be preparing for and evolving to. And I know you've got a new park in the works over in Sydney at Olympic Park.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. So the business model for us was to roll out 10 parks in 10 years.
Wow, it's pretty audacious.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have big audacious.
All in Australia, or
in Australia.
Yep.
Yeah. So you got to have big audacious dreams to kind of keep driving people on. And our next park's in Sydney at Olympic Park, which is going to be amazing. In terms of, we're obviously in a period of a bit of a sugar rush, I guess, at the moment, with people trying out this new experience for the very first time. First surf park open to the public in the Southern Hemisphere. But we've been thinking about this for a very long time. We're kind of like an overnight success. It's been 7 years in the making. So coming into the winter period, we've been thinking about that a lot. Obviously there'll be a seasonality effect with the beginners not wanting to come out in the cold as much, but that's why we've got our big hot tubs on the shoreline. That's why we've got hot showers, and we'll have tie-ups with some of these ski resorts, and so you can go from peak to peak, surf, ski on the peaks or snowboard up on the peaks of the mountains, and come down to our peak zone and come and surf with us out here over the same weekend.
Speaking of which, is there maybe an urban snow in the works?
Yeah, well, I think I've got the domain name secured, but what we're looking at doing is more like you've got après ski, but you could have après surf. So I think over the winter period, it's going to be come and have an extreme experience in extreme conditions. There's going to be less people around the lagoon. It means you get more waves per session. So I think all of our core surfers are obviously going to be with us all the way through the year, no problem anyway. And then it's just getting the visitor market and also those people who are still wanting to learn to surf to come and join us during those months as well. And I guess there's multiple ways to sort of sell through that experience to people. So
Well, I guess that's a marketing problem, if you will. And one thing that has struck me as a big win has been the marketing that Urban Surf has put out there, especially the social media presence. It's just gone from zero to hero literally in the last 3 months.
It's crazy. And big props to our marketing guys led by Rupert Partridge, our brand and marketing manager. The work that they've done is just incredible. And the thing that I love about it as well is it's just truly authentic. It just still resonates with every post the guys do. It sort of speaks that same language that we all have here. And I think, brands need to have a personality in order to be able to connect with people. There's that phrase about, don't tell me what you're selling, tell me the why of why you're selling it. And people want to connect with you that way and work out whether they want to invest their sort of trust with you as much as their money. So, I think just that approach that we've taken, which is a really honest and sort of authentic approach to it. And, we're just a bunch of surfers, and we're just as stoked about this as anyone else. We're all the ones waiting to see, how many people are in the lagoon, and is there a spare slot we could just slip in and get a quick wave? And we're still as pumped about it as everyone. So. Yeah.
And for some of the surfers listening, if they're coming out to the park for the first time, have you got any advice around board selection so they have the best experience possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'm a sort of upper intermediate, low advanced sort of surfer. And I've found that epoxy boards, in terms of construction, work better than polyurethane, PU boards. I'm 6'2", 86 kilos, and my go-to board in the lagoon for the advanced waves is a 5'9", 27.5 litre board. So that's probably about 3 inches shorter and 2 litres less than what I ride in the ocean. Right. So I think smaller and tighter and whippier is probably better for the lagoon. It's about trying to find something that is almost like a skateboard that you can ride out there. You don't need to have a huge amount of flotation because you're not paddling around for hours and hours. You don't have to duck dive. And then really it's about having the right equipment under your feet. Fins set up. I'd never believed that there was any real differences in fins. I thought it was just marketing, guys doing mediums and larges and different types of rakes and all this sort of stuff. And it's absolutely true though. It literally is. We've been playing around with different thruster setups where you have larger outside fins and then like a little, almost like it's like a modified 20 setup basically. And I think that works probably the best. Larger outside fins and then like a little kind of stabilizer fin in the middle, and different tail shapes for boards work a bit better in different waves. It's almost like you need now, we're getting to a point where we're going to have a golf club bag of boards for different wave types, for even the pool and different types of waves in the pool, and then for the ocean. I've started actually making a list. Made a list over Christmas of all the new boards I want to get in my quiver. There's 4 of them for the pool, and there's 3 of them for the lagoon. Sorry, for the ocean that I want to start putting into my quiver at home. But my wife says 1 in, 1 out. So I've got to start selling a few boards off before I can
funny
do that.
though, like even when you're learning to surf out in the ocean, it's funny how quickly you start acquiring or accumulating lots of different boards.
Oh yeah,
you think, I'll just start with the 7.5 or 8 foot softy, and that'll do me. And then you get better. And it's like, okay, well now I need to go down to 6 foot. All right, now I need to get a fiberglass board. All right, now I need to get a fish, and all these different size boards. And now I need to be conscious of how big the waves are. So if it's bigger, if it's small and quite flat, well maybe I'll get a fun board for that.
Yeah.
And it's insane. So I've got 3 boards in my garage. Like I said, I started about 1.5 years ago, and I can see myself getting a 4th one soon based on some advice that I got from one of the coaches out here a couple of weeks ago. So it's like, it's I guess that just speaks to the addictive nature of the sport.
It is. And it's, I think, maybe one of the advantages of learning to surf with us is you can use all of our hire boards at really low prices to progress yourself from the 9-footer to the 8-footer to the 7-footer, and then start getting yourself those right sort of size fiberglass boards for your intermediate steps as you go through surfing. A couple other little bits of advice for surfing the lagoon. If you're out the back, we've got actually quite a narrow takeoff position, and so when you're in the ocean, oftentimes you can kind of glide into waves and let it sort of chip shot you in, whereas for us you need to paddle to hold yourself in position as the wave draws back, but then as it comes through, you've probably got about a 2 meter wide window to paddle and get to your feet. And so as in the ocean, getting to your feet as quickly as you possibly can is super important, because it creates time. And time's necessary to make the right choices in terms of your next maneuvers and getting yourself on the right part of the wave. So you need to have a bit of explosive paddle power, probably a little more than the ocean, to give yourself the best opportunity to ride the wave to its fullest extent. But and the other thing as well, which doesn't come naturally to normal surfers in the ocean, is if you fall off the wave, typically what you tend to do is hold your position, grab your board, and try and turn around and paddle straight back out the back again. When I fall in the lagoon here, I just kind of go into a bit of a ball and let the wave take me all the way as far as it possibly can underwater, and I pop up on the inside, maybe another 5 or 6 meters further along, because that then gets you out of the impact zone. And it's actually much quicker to take then the next wave on the head and get washed in a little further and go with the current to drag you across the lagoon to our big rip and then go out via the rip than it is to try and paddle across it. It's almost impossible to paddle across it. So that's probably the 2 little bits of advice. The third one is stick a little bit of wax in your weddy or in or the back pocket of your boardies, because you go through wax super quick during your session. And
I think that tip around letting the wave take you out as far as possible just means you have less work to do to get back in the lineup as well. Because I know one thing from my perspective was, when I'm out in the ocean, I can kind of take my time a bit. But here, when I'm on the clock, I got an hour, I'm just paddling furiously. By the end of it, I'm like, oh man, that was a good workout.
Oh man, it is. It's crazy. Like, and I've been blessed to be able to surf here a lot with no one around and no time pressures and whatever. And I've had my first couple of public sessions, where I've booked in and I was surfing with a couple of different people, and it's a completely different experience. It's still amazing, but I feel like I'm on the clock, and I go, I want to get my 12 waves.
Paddle.
And I came out of it the other day, I was just exhausted, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
So we might wrap up with this then, just on the topic of being exhausted and fitness. I mean, what are you doing to stay on top of your game, your emotional game, your physical game outside of surfing?
Oh, it's a really good question. My life has been so dominated by what I've been trying to do over the last couple of years with this. I sat back over the Christmas New Year break and thought, right, I've just got to get back into what was my game previously. So I'm starting to meditate again, which I haven't been doing.
Any type of meditation or just breath work? Yeah,
breath work and a little bit of guided meditation. Chris Hemsey told me to sign up to his Centre Fit app thing, which I thought would be a good idea, because I need to get training again. And there's some really interesting, really good guided meditations there. So I did one on the plane just on the way across today. I've got to get back into yoga. I'm so inflexible. And I used to love yoga as well, and I just need to, and it's so important.
Any type of yoga, like vinyasa?
Vinyasa yoga, typically. And I think as you get older, but I think at any age, flexibility in surfing is so important.
I think mobility in general as you get older, because I think one of the key things that takes years off your life when you're an elderly person is falling over.
Absolutely.
So, maintaining that mobility. And I read a study about people in Southeast Asia who tend to do a lot of squatting, particularly in places like Vietnam. Apparently their hips are a lot stronger and they are less prone to falls in old age. So
that makes so much sense. I think that for me. So from a physical and mental side, meditation, some yoga. I think reading again. Like haven't been reading for pleasure recently, and I've got a stack of books I want to get into. So
any particular book comes to mind?
What are there? I've got a couple of. There's one in particular called. I've just started it. It's by a famous New York journo who's written for the New Yorker a lot, and it's called. It's a guy who grew up in the 50s surfing in Hawaii, white guy, and it's about his adventures surfing around the world. Right. So I still can't get away from surfing, and even in my reading material. But it's been something that's been recommended to me for years. It's not Barbarians at the Gate. That's that other one.
That's the other one.
It's. It'll come to me.
That's right. I'll dig it up and I'll put it in the show notes.
We'll put in the show notes, exactly. But that's a great read. Like I'm part way into it now, and it's really exciting, really captivating. Great read. There's a bunch of different things. I think Alain de Botton. I've read
from the School of Life. Constellations of Philosophy. Have you read that one?
Yeah. Architecture of Happiness. All that I've read. Pretty much all of his things. I really enjoy his writing. I'm not sure if it appeals to me, I think, because of my lawyer background or something. But so reading for pleasure. I think doing just dedicating a lot more time with my family and doing stuff with them is something I'm focused on this year. That gives me just internal power and strength and comfort. So doing that. I think trying to get back to the gym. At the moment I've got tennis elbow in both elbows. And I've never had tennis elbow before, and it's from paddling too much. So because I've had so many waves out in the lagoon, popping up and paddling, I've actually given myself tennis elbow. So I don't think any surfer ever has suffered from that. But now we can introduce repetitive strain injuries to people from having a lagoon environment to surf in.
Well, I'm not a doctor or a physician, but I recently took BPC 157, which is a peptide.
Okay.
And this is something, apparently it can't be patented by Big Pharma because it's naturally produced by the body, and therefore your health practitioner won't recommend it. But I had a torn meniscus. Yeah. And I've been on this for like the last 8 days. I could barely do a box jump, and I feel 100% now. Like I'll smash out 20 box jumps in a row, no problem. So maybe one worth checking out.
Absolutely. Put that in the show notes. I'm going to look 100%. It up. 100%. No, so I think I've, just bringing the life back into balance a little bit. I'm still loving what I'm doing in the surf park space. I'm looking at things globally now as well as here in Australia. And just super excited to have been able to deliver this, to see all the smiling faces of everyone out in the lagoon, and just see what happens next.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, Andrew. Really enjoyed your hospitality. I think when I came out to the park, you took me around for a good half an hour, had a good chat, but also just want to congratulate you on the amazing work you've done here. I know it's been 8 odd years in the making, or 7 years, like you said, overnight success that took 7 years. A lot of challenges over the last 18 months, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time away from your family. But look, if we can get more people in Melbourne to #surf more, I think it's a fantastic thing you're doing. And I look forward to seeing the other 9 parks pop up. But before we wrap up, where can people go to find out more about Urban Surf?
Please hit us up on socials, which is Urban Surf, URBNSURF, or on our webpage, which is www.urbansurf.com.
Fantastic. Well, this is Steve Glaveski signing out and telling everybody to surf more. Hi guys, Steve again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to receive a weekly email from me, complete with reflections, books I've been reading, words of wisdom, and access to blogs, ebooks, and more that I'm publishing on a regular basis, just leave your details at futuresquared.xyz/subscribe and you'll receive the very next one. If you're picking up what I'm putting down, take a minute to like, share, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It goes a long way to giving the podcast the exposure it needs so I can continue bringing you guests and conversations of the highest caliber. You can catch me on Twitter at Steve Glibeski and on Instagram at TheSteveGlibeski. Until next time.
Hasta la vista, baby.